What defines the size of a shadow? Is it the miles of land beneath a boot, or the echo of a language that refuses to die? Many have claimed the throne of the greatest in the world, and many have lied. Today, the flames of truth will melt the myths. I am Anthony Emerald, and this is the 10 greatest empires of the world. Before we begin, let's set the rules. Here, 5 iron pillars decide who enters history and who fades into oblivion. Each pillar is worth up to 10 points. 50 in total is the absolute maximum. Spoiler: nobody gets close. The 5 pillars are: first, extension and geography. Evaluates territorial area and geographic continuity. Second, demographics and human power. Measures the percentage of the world population at the time. Third, longevity and stability. Analyzes resilience to crises and the empire's lifespan. Fourth, cultural impact and legacy. Measures influence on laws, religion and language. Fifth, economy and logistics. Evaluates control of trade routes, infrastructure and share of global GDP. Each empire will be analyzed at its absolute peak, at the maximum height of power. Fair? Fair. Let's get to 10th place. Umayyad Caliphate. Peak 720 AD. 33 points. 10th place. I start with one that many people forget, which is a historical crime punishable by 50 years of listening to dragon lectures. The Umayyad Caliphate was one of the greatest exercises in lightning military expansion this planet has ever seen. From Damascus, they ruled a world. Extension and geography score 7. With 11 million square kilometers, they formed a continuous block from the Pyrenees to the edge of the Indian subcontinent. No islands scattered across the ocean. Solid ground, conquered with iron and faith. Demographics score 6. About 62 million people, nearly 29% of the world's population at the time, but most were recently conquered peoples, with still fragile loyalties. Economy score 7. They controlled the overland silk routes and part of the maritime routes of the Indian Ocean. The Arab currency circulated from Seville to Samarkand. The Caliphate accounted for around 30% of world GDP. Longevity score 5. They ruled for only 89 years before imploding in a bloody civil war. Rapid expansion, rapid internal implosion. Cultural legacy score 8. The Arabic language as an administrative and religious vehicle, a legacy that persists today in 25 countries. The Islamization of North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula left marks that survived for centuries. The Umayyad Caliphate was a meteor, brilliant, fast, immense and fleeting. 33 points. 10th place. The Umayyad Caliphate may have had a brief rise, but the next empire knows how to be tough in a fall. 9th place. Portuguese Empire, peak 1815 AD, 34 points. 9th place. And look, I need to be honest, what the Portuguese did with a country the size of one of my claws, metaphorically speaking, is enough to send shivers down even the scales. A people of less than 2 million left a tiny European peninsula and touched every corner of the globe. Oceanic aggressiveness without parallel. But size comes at a price. Extension and geography score 6. In 1815, the Portuguese Empire controlled about 4 million square kilometers. Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, Goa, Macau. Impressive in dispersion, but catastrophic in continuity. It was an empire of dots, not blocks. Demographics, score 5. The greatest structural problem of Portugal. The mainland had fewer than 3 million inhabitants, controlling territories with tens of millions. Brazil alone had more people than Portugal. Economy, score 7. The Portuguese created the first genuinely global economy. Lisbon was the world's largest spice entrepot. But the dependence on external resources made the wealth transitory. Longevity, score 8. From the first trading post in Ceuta in 1415 to the return of Macau to China in 1999, that is 584 years, the longest-lasting European colonial empire in history. It endured the Spanish, Dutch, French, and British, all wanting their share. Cultural legacy, score 8. Portuguese is spoken by 260 million people in 9 countries. Brazil made Portuguese the 5th most spoken language in the world. The Portuguese Empire was the great pioneer, too small to dominate, but large enough to change the world. 34 points. 9th place. The Portuguese Empire was as tough as a nail in sand, but too small for its ambitions. The next empire was just as ambitious. 8th place. French colonial empire. Peak 1920 AD. 36 points. The French. The French. They invented diplomacy, champagne, and arrogance as state policy, and still built the second largest colonial empire in history. Credit must be given, but fair scores must be given too. Extension and geography, score 8. In 1920, the French Empire covered 12.9 million square kilometers. West Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Madagascar, Indochina, Syria, Polynesia. Scattered across 4 oceans, but with remarkable administrative coherence. Demographics, score 7. About 110 million people under French control, representing 5 to 6% of the world population. But France recruited colonial troops, multiplying its military power beyond the mainland. Economy, score 6. Economists still debate whether the French colonial empire was profitable in net terms. Algeria cost a fortune in military campaigns. Even so, control of African raw materials gave real strategic weight. Longevity, score 6. From the establishment in New France in 1534 to the recognition of African independence in 1960. That is 426 years of imperial project. But the peak lasted less than half a century and was marked by brutal decolonization wars. Cultural legacy, score 9. French is the official language of 29 countries, spoken by more than 300 million people. The Napoleonic legal system shaped the civil codes of dozens of nations. The French legacy far surpasses the duration of the empire itself. Grand in area, admirable in cultural legacy, but costly to maintain. The French Empire was a giant with feet of gilded clay. 36 points. 8th place. 7th place. Yuan dynasty. Peak 1310 AD. 37 points. The Yuan dynasty. The Mongols in China. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis, did something no foreigner had ever managed before. He did not just invade China, he became its emperor. And not just any China, the southern Song China, the richest and most populous in the medieval world. That deserves, at the very least, respect. Extension and geography score 8. The Yuan controlled from 11 to 14 million square kilometers. China, Mongolia, Manchuria, Yunnan, and Korea as a vassal state. Geographically continuous, controllable by cavalry. Demographics score 8. Governing China meant governing between 60 and 80 million people in a world of 400 million. about 20% of the global population. Economy, score 8. Yuan China was the economic engine of the medieval world. The Grand Canal was expanded. The Silk routes were protected. It was during the Yuan that Marco Polo arrived in China. The use of paper money on a national scale anticipated centuries of financial innovation. Longevity, score 4. This is the Achilles heel of the Yuan. The dynasty lasted only 97 years before being brought down by the Red Turban Rebellion. The Mongols never fully integrated into Han culture, and the resentment was fatal. Cultural legacy, score 9. The Pax Mongolica allowed technologies and ideas to flow from China to the West. Beijing became the permanent capital of China. The Ming dynasty itself, which succeeded the Yuan, inherited the bureaucracy and infrastructure they left behind. The Yuan dynasty was rich, populous and influential, but died young. A golden meteor, 37 points. 7th place. That was the first paranoid empire I ever saw, but the next one was on medication. 6th place. Abbasid Caliphate, peak 850 AD, 38 points. And here, I ask for your attention. We are not talking about just a political power. We are talking about something the world has rarely seen. An empire that made human knowledge its primary commodity. Baghdad in 850 AD was the most learned and richest place on earth. And if you are watching this video based on mathematics, astronomy or medicine, you owe a debt to these people. Extension and geography, score 6. The Abbasid Caliphate formerly controlled about 4 to 5 million square kilometers, smaller than the Umayyads but more densely administered. Demographics, score 6. Estimates point to 30 to 50 million inhabitants, representing 20 to 25% of the world population in the 9th century. Baghdad alone had about 1 million inhabitants, the largest city in the medieval Western world. Economy, score 8. Baghdad was the central hub of trade routes between the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean and Central Asia. The Islamic banking system, including the sak, origin of the word check, facilitated intercontinental trade. The Caliphate represented about 30% of global GDP at the time. Longevity, score 7. The Abbasids ruled from 750 to 1258. That is 508 years. Impressive. But the end was devastating, when the Mongols destroyed Baghdad in one of the greatest cultural catastrophes in history. Cultural legacy, score 10. Maximum score. The House of Wisdom preserved and advanced Greek, Persian and Indian knowledge. Al-Khwarizmi's algebra, Ibn al-Haytham's optics, Ibn Sina's medicine. The numerals you are using right now to read the scores on this list: Indo-Arabic. Coffee, the origin of the word is Arabic. If there were a category for scientific impact, the Abbasids would take the highest score on the list. 38 points. 6th place. This is where things start to get serious. Only the greatest are in the top 5. 5th place. Spanish Empire. Peak 1790 AD. 40 points. And now we reach the top 5, where every point matters. The Spanish Empire. The first truly global empire in history. While every other empire before them controlled parts of the world, Spain in 1790 had territory on 4 continents. And they practically invented the concept of America, for better and for worse. Extension and geography, score 8. At its peak, the Spanish Empire spanned about 13.7 million square kilometers. North, Central and South America, the Philippines, Pacific Islands, African possessions, European domains, with well-structured viceroyalties functioning as autonomous states. Demographics, score 7. About 68 million people in 1790. The demographic tragedy of the Americas, the collapse of indigenous populations, had reduced the human potential. Spain compensated through mestizaje and colonization. Economy, score 8. Potosí, in present-day Peru, produced more than 40,000 tons of silver between 1556 and 1783, financing all of Europe, and China via the Manila-Acapulco trade. The galleon logistics was the largest logistical operation of the era. Longevity, score 7. From 1492 to the loss of Cuba and the Philippines in 1898, that is 406 years. Remarkable. But the 17th century was one of progressive decline. Spain declared bankruptcy at least 6 times between 1557 and 1647. Cultural legacy, score 10. Maximum score. Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world by native speakers. 490 million people in 20 countries. Roman Catholicism as the dominant religion across Latin America. The Spanish legacy in the Americas is unmatched. The Spanish Empire was the first to embrace the entire world, but the silver that enriched it also corrupted it. 40 points. 5th place. A lasting empire that keeps its roots alive today, but time showed who really runs the place. The next one said it had no fear of time. 4th place. Russian Empire, peak 1895 AD, 40 points. 4th place. Tied with Spain in points, but with a completely different profile. Ladies and gentlemen, when I look at that map, my millennial mind still hesitates. A country that expanded at a rate of 50 square kilometers per day for centuries without interruption. From a medieval principality in Moscow to a colossus touching 3 oceans. Russia did not conquer. It grew, like a giant crystal, 1 degree at a time. Extension and geography, score 10. The Russian Empire in 1895 covered 22.8 million square kilometers, the largest continuous territory governed by a single political entity up to that point. There were no oceans separating the mainland from the colonies. Russia simply stretched across the entire width of Eurasia. Demographics, score 6. About 125 million inhabitants in 1895. The Russian problem was density. 125 million people spread across 22 million square kilometers. Siberia was nearly empty. And serfdom, abolished only in 1861, had left the peasant population in underdevelopment. Economy, score 6. Rich in natural resources. But industrializing a territory of that size was monumental. The Trans-Siberian Railway, begun in 1891, was the most ambitious engineering project of the era. Longevity, score 9. From the Tsardom of Ivan the Terrible in 1547 to the collapse of the monarchy in 1917. That is 370 years. It withstood Napoleonic invasions, the Crimean War, Cossack revolts. Extraordinary geopolitical resilience. Cultural legacy, score 9. Russian literature of the 19th century, with Dostoevsky, Tolstoy and Chekhov, is considered the peak of Western fiction. The music of Tchaikovsky and the ballet defined global standards. The largest contiguous territory in modern history, but with an economy and demographics that could not keep up with its size. The Russian Empire was a giant with dreams bigger than its pockets. 40 points. 4th place. It can be said this was the empire that most influenced the modern era. Out of respect for this empire, no jokes. Now things are heating up and it's getting hard to decide. 3rd place. Qing Dynasty. Peak 1790 AD. 43 points. 3rd place. Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for numbers that warp reality. The Qing dynasty in 1790 was, how to explain? Imagine that 1/3 of all humanity answered to a single political, cultural, and economic system. That was the Qing world, and the Manchus who built this were, originally, a minority of fewer than 500,000 warriors who conquered 300 million Chinese. Is that strategic genius or madness? Both. Extension and geography. Score 9. The Qing dynasty at its peak covered 13 million square kilometers. Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, Manchuria, all of Han China, plus tributary states such as Korea, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Nepal. A cohesive territorial bloc administered by a 1,000-year-old bureaucracy. Demographics. Score 10. Maximum score. In 1790, Qing China had about 330 million inhabitants. The world population was approximately 900 million. Therefore, the Qing controlled about 37% of humanity, the highest percentage of the world population under a single government in modern history. Economy. Score 10. In 1820, China represented about 33% of global GDP, the highest of any national economy in history. All the Spanish silver flowing around the world ended up in China. Longevity. Score 7. The Qing ruled from 1644 to 1912. That is 268 years. But the 19th century was a systemic catastrophe. The Opium Wars, the Taiping Rebellion, the deadliest civil war in history with 20 to 30 million dead, and European invasions with unequal treaties. Cultural legacy. Score 7. Mandarin is spoken by 1.3 billion people, the most spoken language in the world in absolute number of native speakers. The Chinese writing system influenced Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese. The Qing dynasty was the greatest demographic and economic experiment in human history. 1/3 of humanity, 1/3 of global GDP. The numbers are so immense they almost lose meaning. 43 points. Third place. If not for the revolutions and betrayals, this empire would still be alive today. Second place. Mongol Empire, peak 1270 AD, 44 points, second place. And I will be honest with you, part of me wanted to put the Mongols in first, because what Genghis Khan built is, in terms of sheer brute force and speed of conquest, the most impressive military feat on this list. From a tribe of nomads with no writing, no cities, no administrative tradition, to the largest contiguous empire in history, in less than 70 years. That is unsettling. Extension and geography. Score 10. The Mongol Empire in 1270 covered 24 million square kilometers. The largest contiguous territory governed by a single entity in all of human history. From Korea to Hungary, from Moscow to Baghdad, from Siberia to Burma, an uninterrupted block of land. This criterion belongs to the Mongols. Demographics. Score 9. About 100 to 120 million people under Mongol control in 1270, representing 25 to 30% of the world population. But the Mongol conquest caused the greatest pre-modern demographic catastrophe. China alone lost 30 to 40% of its population during the Mongol Wars. Economy. Score 8. The Pax Mongolica from 1250 to 1350 was paradoxically one of the greatest eras of free trade in medieval history. The Silk routes were back in full operation. The Mongol postal system, with 1,400 stations, was the Internet of the Middle Ages. Longevity. Score 5. The Achilles heel of the conquerors. The unified empire lasted only 59 years before fragmenting into 4 independent khanates. Without an established written language, without their own bureaucratic tradition, the Mongols depended entirely on local elites. Cultural legacy, score 10. The Mongol paradox. Without creating any dominant language or religion of their own, the Mongols reshaped the world. They connected East and West for the first time in history. They transmitted gunpowder, printing, and paper to Europe, elements that defined the Renaissance. It is estimated that 16 million people are directly descended from Genghis Khan. The Mongols were the most powerful hurricane ever to sweep this planet. Maximum score in 2 criteria. But the fleeting nature of their unity cost them decisive points. 44 points. Second place. The Mongols failed in something crucial when it comes to strength. They did not teach the younger ones how to fight. First place. British Empire. Peak 1920 AD. 46 points. The British Empire. I will try to be impartial. It is not my favorite. Far too damp for my skills. And their tea is overrated. But the data speaks for itself. And when the data speaks this clearly, even a dragon who has seen everything must bow its head. Extension and geography, score 10. The British Empire in 1920 covered 35.5 million square kilometers, 24% of the Earth's land surface. No other empire ever controlled so much territory. Canada, Australia, India, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Iraq, Malaysia, New Zealand, Jamaica. 6 continents represented. The sun, indeed, never set. Demographics, score 9. About 458 million people in 1920. Approximately 23% of the world population at the time. British India alone had more than 300 million. The Imperial Army recruited soldiers from every continent. A truly global military machine. Economy, score 10. The Royal Navy controlled all major straits and oceanic routes in the world. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was the largest financial center on the planet. The British Industrial Revolution produced more than 25% of all global manufacturing. The Suez Canal, administered by the British, was the artery of East-West trade. Longevity, score 8. From the establishment in Virginia in 1607 to the return of Hong Kong to China in 1997, that is 390 years. In the period of greatest extension, from 1815 to 1947, that is 132 years of virtually unchallenged hegemony. The so-called Pax Britannica. Cultural legacy, score 10. English is the global lingua franca, spoken by more than 1.5 billion people as a first or second language. Official language of 67 countries. It is the language of science, aviation, diplomacy, and the internet. The common law legal system operates in 27% of the world population. Modern football, the modern Olympic Games, British creations that the world adopted. The British Empire was the only one that won in nearly every criterion simultaneously. The largest territory, the greatest economy of its era, the longest lasting of the modern empires at its peak, and the cultural legacy most deeply rooted in the contemporary world. 46 points, first place. If you made it this far, you are not just a spectator of history. You are a student of it. And a student of history deserves a proper home. Subscribe. Leave a comment saying which empire you would have placed differently. And if you disagree with the methodology, convince me. I have centuries of patience and scales proof against weak arguments.